This episode of the Drone Radio Show podcast is presented by Pix4D, the leader in 3D mapping software for professionals. Pix4D's easy-to-use software converts images taken with any camera to precise and accurate 3D models. To find out more, visit pix4d.com or start mapping with drones by downloading Pix4D Capture for free on iTunes or Google Play.
Even since the beginning, if you go back to, let's just say 2013, the drone vendors have been trying to figure out where's that holy grail. First AVSI predicted it was going to be precision agriculture, and that didn't really pan out.
You're listening to the Drone Radio Show podcast, the show about drones and the people who use them for business, fun, and research. Hosted by Randy Goers.
Hello, everyone. This is Randy Goers, and welcome to the Drone Radio Show podcast, episode 252. What's the outlook for the drone industry? That's the question we explore in my continuing series of interviews with industry analysts, writers, and editors. In this series, I interview guests with diverse opinions and perspectives on the industry. They provide a range of insights on some of the industry's current topics and trends. By the end of the series, you'll have a good sense of where the industry is going and how you can position yourself to take advantage. In this podcast, we hear from Lisa Murray, the event director of Diversified Communications, an international media company with more than 15 years' experience in producing world-renowned events for precision measurement professionals. If you're in this field, then you have most likely attended one of their events, including SPAR 3D Conference and Expo, the International Lidar Mapping Forum, the Commercial UAV Expo, or Amsterdam Drone Week. Her experience with Diversified Communications gives her a unique vantage point on the commercial drone industry, the companies making a difference, and the people who are creating change. In this edition of the Drone Radio Show, Lisa talks about the Commercial UAV Expo and Amsterdam Drone Week, the global trends shaping these shows, and the issues and opportunities driving the commercial drone sector. But before we hear from Lisa, I want to thank those of you who are supporting my funding campaign. Whether it's $1, $100, or much more, you can help defray the cost of production and keep the podcast going and growing. Go to droneradioshow.com/donate. So let's get Lisa Murray's insights on the drone industry in 2019 and what to expect in 2020. Let's pick up the interview where I asked Lisa to introduce herself.
Lisa Murray, Group Director for Diversified Communications.
Lisa, can you tell us about Diversified Communications and its connection to the drone industry?
Diversified Communications is a third-generation family-owned business based in Portland, Maine. We have over 800 employees globally, and we produce conferences and trade events. We have a technology portfolio that is based in surveying and mapping, which includes SPAR 3D, International Lidar Mapping Forum, and 2 Commercial UAV Expos, in addition to geobusiness in the UK. And we focus on data capture technologies and the surveying and mapping market.
Who would be most interested in attending these shows?
Our focus is pretty specific when it comes to our attendees and our vendors. So we picked 7 verticals that are key for drone integration. So construction, infrastructure and transportation, forestry and agriculture, mining and aggregates, surveying and mapping, public safety, and precision agriculture. That's it. That's what we focus on. And we're looking for precision measurement professionals. So they tend to be engineering leads, UAS integration specialists. These are the titles, project lead, somebody who is doing a complex project and wants to add drones as a method of data capture, in addition to mobile mapping, terrestrial laser scanning, aerial LiDAR, etc. It's been very interesting to have the perspective of the European drone market as well. And that this partnership that we have with the RAI and Amsterdam Drone Week is interesting because they're very different markets and you get different perspectives. And so what I noticed in 2019 over there was this intense focus on UAM. And, Europe very much is in the smart city mode, and they have a lot of energy around it. The European Commission is super focused on these initiatives, and a lot of the town managers and mayors are very focused on, modern developments within their own cities. So when I'm thinking about the European market, I really feel like that is a focus of theirs. And then I would say that the adoption of small UAS is perhaps a little bit less. So what I hear from customers who are global and working in both markets is that there's a reticence to adopting drone technology sometimes in industrial applications, a little bit slower than on the US side. But I think the focus on urban air mobility is quite intense over there. And I think that obviously there are disparate views on this, but there's a lot of optimism in the drone market for 2019 in the States. Obviously we have Part 107, which greased the skids for a lot of people to be more involved in the market, and they don't really have that yet implemented in Europe. So I think we take turns, initially when we got into this in 2015, they were perceived as being ahead of the US in the North American market. And then the FAA sort of made some moves that made it easier for people in the US to integrate drones. Mostly Part 107 is what I'm talking about, but that sort of leapfrogged us ahead in a number of areas.
Let's focus on the U.S. market first. From your perspective, what was the biggest story in 2019?
If I can start in a little bit of more of a general context, what I heard from many of my customers directly, and this is FLIR, Pix4D, Drone Up, Drone Deploy, is that they were experiencing a lot of success and were pretty bullish about the drone market. But then the Bloomberg report came out, which was, has the drone bubble burst? And, we made a concerted effort at Commercial UAV Expo 2019 in Americas to focus on what was working, who was making money. And yes, we need remote ID, and yes, we need BVLOS, and everybody's waiting for that to open up new opportunities. But what's possible right now? And there are a lot of success stories of people who are making money and making things happen. So that was my big takeaway, was let's focus on that and what people can do under the current system of regulations. And you saw that in our programming, where we had some of the more successful CEOs up there talking about it. Another major development that came at the 11th hour was UPS, getting their 135. And we immediately put Bala Ganesh, who's the VP of drone integration, up as a keynote, which got a lot of attention.
What's the impact of the UPS announcement?
From a vendor perspective, it's a huge opportunity for a lot of different vendors who have airframes and drone solutions to partner with UPS. Frankly, everybody was clamoring to get to them at the event, and they were shopping. So that is a major move forward, I would say, just in terms of developing those partnerships, even if we have some time before that actually becomes a reality.
Do you think that part of the angst was caused because people were focusing on the markets that didn't exist rather than on the ones that did?
I would say that that's a big part of it because, again, to look at surveying and mapping and say, well, we can't do anything until we have BVLOS simply isn't true. There's a lot of inspection that can take place, or even land mapping that can take place within the current regulations. I also think that even since the beginning, if you go back to, let's just say 2013, the drone vendors have been trying to figure out where's that holy grail. First AVSI predicted it was going to be precision agriculture, and that didn't really pan out. So then was it going to be construction? Or the reality is surveying and mapping people have been doing 3D data capture of all sorts for years. And this was another tool in the toolkit. So for them, it was a pretty easy plug-in to be able to use drones and just augment what they're currently doing. So there are lots of use cases where it's possible to do something now. And I think people are discovering what that is as the market shakes out.
For now, the Holy Grail seems to be out of reach, but we're still going to see positive growth.
I think so. And I think that this sort of is mirroring the Gartner hype cycle. So it goes right along with a lot of other nascent technologies. There was a hype cycle. A lot of consumers bought drones, which contributed to a big surge. But now that's sort of tapered off and plateaued. And so then we kind of went down into the trough of disillusionment where the market shakes out. You know, we've seen people close. Some big names are not in the market anymore. They're just not players anymore. And the use cases have changed as well. But now the people who are here are starting to actually get traction and make money, but it won't be that giant surge, as you said. It'll be a more measured growth, I think, over time.
At the 2019 Commercial UAV Expo, which speaker seemed to have a message that resonated most with the audience?
Jim Bridenstine of NASA was hugely popular, and NASA has been so involved and so at the forefront of drone technology. So that's important. And he was excellent for those reasons. I think that he also presented a vision, just a general interest vision of mining space and what that looks like and where we're headed with lots of different initiatives. So it was a very positive, forward-looking keynote that everybody could kind of wrap their head around and understand that this is really happening. So there was a lot of excitement around him. Plus, he's just a great, articulate speaker and an engaging guy.
Did he give any indication of how he thought NASA's role in the industry was going to evolve?
Well, I mean, he talked about the Grand Challenge and some things that are currently in the works and sort of went over, you know, how NASA's been involved from the beginning. But he also said that he had a meeting with President Trump about where they want to be in terms of space exploration. And I think he said he was looking at 2030, and Trump backtracked and said, nope, it needs to be 2028. So there's an aggressive movement among the current administration to do more quicker. And he told some great anecdotes about that.
Which industries are rising to the top in terms of successful drone applications?
Well, certainly infrastructure inspection is kind of a no-brainer and a popular one, whether that's in the energy and utility industry or, you know, roads, bridges, tunnels, rail. All of those applications are in full swing, I would say. And surveying and mapping in general, you know, Colin Snow a few years ago had predicted that surveying and mapping was going to be the biggest sector, and that has stayed true. So people are using this for land mapping, coastal zone erosion. We have a lot of natural disasters happening right now, and you see drones being used in ways that they might have used helicopters or aerial survey before, whether that's Notre Dame burning or flooding. Certainly public safety is a hot market right now because they can often get waivers easier than other industries. And so public safety is adopting drones at a faster pace because it's obvious and immediate how they can benefit what they're doing.
Was there anything at the expo that really caught your attention?
I think one of the things that always surprises me is how much people like the outdoor demos and how much that's a strong need to see systems in action. So what that tells me is that these people know what they're looking for, and they're not just wanting to watch a drone fly within a cage. They want to see the application. They want to see the data. They know what they're looking for. And I would say the attendees are becoming smarter buyers. I also think back to when 5 years ago we started this and we had, 80 companies on the show floor, and we're up to 260 booths. And that growth is incredible to me. This is one of the fastest launches Diversified has ever done. But it hasn't been, as you say, it hasn't been the surge. It's been more like steady growth over time.
How does Amsterdam Drone Week and the Commercial UAV Expo compare?
For the Americas show, it's really focused on small UAS and what's possible right now. Amsterdam Drone Week is a bit of a different beast because it has three parts to it. One is EASA, which is the European Aviation Safety Association. So that's the regulatory body, and they have their full high-level conference going on at the same time. Amsterdam Drone Week itself focuses on UAM. So you see Boeing and Airbus there. You see drone taxis. There's a focus on UTM and UAM and more of a futuristic outlook. And then our piece, which is the third leg of the stool, is small UAS and what's possible right now. So that piece mirrors America's very closely, but the ecosystem as a whole is much more represented in Amsterdam than it is in the U.S.
What's the relationship between Diversified Communications and Amsterdam Drone Week?
We're a partner. We have Commercial UAV Expo Europe, and then everybody else is a partner in that. It's like an umbrella organization, and we are one partner of three.
What benefits does the partnership bring to Diversified? And also, how does the partnership benefit the people who attend?
So when we had Commercial UAV Expo Europe, again, it was just the small UAS slice of the pie. So being a part of the larger ecosystem allows people to cross-pollinate between regulatory content, commercial applications, and then forward-thinking, smart city UAM infrastructure conversations. So you've got everybody from ministers of infrastructure there to small UAS solutions providers to end users to regulators. The EU delegates for transportation are there. Patrick Key of EASA is there. So it's a real mix of people from the complete ecosystem of drones without just the small UAS focus. So it's a bigger play, if you will, and it's designed to bring all of those partners together in one place. So there's a lot to see, there's a lot to learn, and you can pop back and forth between the different conference programs depending on what your interest in the industry is.
Is it possible for that type of integration to happen here in the United States?
I'm not sure that we'll ever get the FAA to colocate with us, which is kind of the equivalent of having EASA colocate in Amsterdam. But actually, our partners in Amsterdam are launching a UAM summit in 2020 in collaboration with Commercial UAV Expo Americas. So that's going to be September 15th through the 17th at the Paris. And they will do a day-and-a-half program on urban air mobility in the North American market. And then it will flow into Commercial UAV Expo Americas the rest of the week.
In your opinion, what are the similarities between the European and the North American drone markets?
Well, I think everyone is facing the same challenges in terms of regulation. They want BVLOS as much as we do. But I think that there's also a keen interest on the part of end users to start implementing what they can. So I think that's a commonality. The other thing that's interesting about it is the drone market is not a regional market by any means. So these two events are some of the only ones that pull people together globally across the spectrum. So if you think about it, a lot of drone solutions are actually manufactured and came out of Europe, whether it's Pix4D or, Del Air or Regal, or some of those companies are actually based in Europe, but they export their products to the U.S. market and vice versa. So anybody who's involved in the global drone market, which is many people, is going to be interested in both of those events. And I think what's interesting about that is that if you watch what one market is doing, whether you're a regulator or a business person, you can learn from what's happening there and apply it to the other market. So I would say there are certain areas where they're more advanced. Maybe precision agriculture solutions are more advanced because the Netherlands is a high-tech ag country. On the other hand, public safety may be more advanced in our country just because they have some funding to actually implement those solutions. So you almost have to look at it on an industry-by-industry view to see, but they are the number 3 market. I mean, North America is number 1, China and Japan are tied for number 2, Europe is number 3. So we're talking about 2 of the world's largest markets for drone technology.
Looking out into 2020, where do you see the opportunities?
Well, we've sort of talked about like which verticals are the most ripe for it and which ones are using it. And I would say public safety, precision ag, and surveying and mapping are at the top. But I also think some of the opportunities that the market is ripe for is to start telling the stories of how drones are doing good in those markets to the public. I think there's a huge amount of public awareness that needs to happen around changing the perception of drones. You know, we're all involved in the industry and we know that drones can do great things, but the average person may be still thinking of them in a military context. And I think it's time for the drone industry to get out there and talk about some of these excellent use cases. For example, when drones are used to save lives, you know, after a hurricane or something, it puts a positive spin on the technology, and there needs to be more of that. So I think it's a huge opportunity. Whether it happens in 2020 or not, I don't know.
What challenges do you see in the next few years?
I would say regulation is an obvious one. I would say that educating even the technical end user on what solutions are the best fit for the job, making sure that we don't oversell what these products can do. They're not always the best choice. Sometimes they are, but not always. And educating that, you know, industrial consumer so that when they do purchase drones and integrate them into their workflow, it's successful. They get the data they need, they get the accuracy they need at the price point that they need, and so that they continue to want to use it more. I think too much hype and too many claims that this is the best thing since sliced bread can actually come back to hurt us in the end. So, you know, transparency, training, education is all super important in that process to make this thing successful long term.
What about opportunities for independent drone operators? You know, a few years ago, it was thought a person could buy a drone and become a successful drone operator serving commercial clients. Is that possible today?
I think the guild is off the bloom on that one, if I'm honest. I think that was part of the hype cycle. A few years ago, we were seeing, particularly at some events, this idea that people were going to buy a drone and start their own survey business. Well, that's not as easy as it sounds. You need to be a certified professional land surveyor in order to do it correctly. So it's not as simple. I mean, that's a degreed position that takes a lot of time and energy and education. I think there are certain industries where you could do that. Real estate, videography, maybe roof inspection, things that are simpler. But really, a lot of the people who are going to be using drones are doing complex jobs like bridge inspection or, you know, industrial inspection of assets like offshore oil platforms or, you know, flare stack or something like that. And you can't just pluck a drone off the shelf and do that. You have to be experienced and educated in that market. So from my perspective and the perspective that Commercial UAV Expo has always taken, it's about that professional survey person who's just going to add drones in. So we don't really focus on somebody buying a drone and starting up their own business because it's very different, the needs of that person versus somebody who's going to spend $60,000 on a solution because they need survey grade accuracy and they need it to be right all the time. You know, that's more like the prosumer hobbyist kind of end of things. And we've never really been about that.
That makes a lot of sense. And as some people have said, drones are just merely a tool helping to extend the expertise of the operator. And if the operator doesn't have a certain skill set, there's not going to be much value created.
You're exactly right, Randy. And that was sort of to my point earlier that I think we need to really be careful about what we say drones can do. And if you're a service provider, to really provide just the amount of data that somebody needs, not too much, and the accurate data that they need. I think that this has happened in laser scanning and mobile mapping for years. You can get the wrong piece of equipment for the wrong job and end up with gobbledygook that doesn't make any sense to you. So you really need an experienced person who knows what you're looking for and the level of detail and level of accuracy, and then they pick the right solution and they deliver the data set that you need. And that's more complex than going to Best Buy and buying a drone and, you know, flying it around and taking images of something.
Do the expos track or monitor the direction of UTM or urban air mobility?
We dabble in it. I would say that it is not our core focus, which is why we partner with Amsterdam Drone Week for the UAM portion. That's really them, not us. Having said that, the UTM players like AirMap and Unifly are very much a part of our expo because they are sort of laying the path work, the groundwork for what eventually will become UAM. And they're doing that with small UAS operators right now. So UTM, yes, UAM, not as much. We give it a little bit of attention because it's going to be so important to everybody eventually, but that is not the focus of what we do.
I know it's early, but what can you tell us about the plans for UAV Expo 2020 and Amsterdam Drone Week?
You're right. It's early days, but we already have 80 companies signed up for the 2020 show in Las Vegas, which is way ahead of previous years and pretty much ahead of any other show out there, I think, right now for 2020. And then for Europe, we plan on having at least 100 vendors at that event and probably 5,000 attendees between Amsterdam Drone Week, EASA, and us. So both are shaping up quite nicely.
Is there anything that we miss that we should talk about?
I guess what I would say about our expos in particular is we are not trying to be all things to all people. So, and I understand that there's a lot of noise out there. There are a lot of events out there. So I think what people need to realize is if they are looking for survey grade tools or sort of high end solutions for complex problems and projects, that's where we would be their first choice of drone show. That's not what everybody's doing in the drone industry. Again, it's a specialized piece of it, but that is what we're focused on. And I will say too that just watch the market. I mean, we're a startup just like anybody else in this space, and they come and they go. So we have a pretty thorough website though, and we're pretty clear on what our focus is in the drone space. So anybody's welcome to visit that, uavexpo.com, and see the details. And if there's any question about what we're about and what we're focusing on, just reach out. We'd be happy to share that with anybody.
And my final question, Lisa, what message would you like to leave regarding the future of the commercial UAV industry?
It's so exciting for everyone involved in this space, I think. And as I said before, we are a startup just like so many of our customers are. So we strive to be the leading event in this space. And we also want to do it from a global perspective. So basically, we're growing along with our customers, and it's been a great ride so far, and we're bullish on the future for all of us in this space.
That's it for episode 252 of the Drone Radio Show. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Lisa Murray of Diversified Communications. I want to thank Lisa for taking the time to speak with me. If you want to learn more about Diversified Communications or want to connect with Lisa, check out the website at expouav.com. You'll also find information about the Commercial UAV Expo and Amsterdam Drone Week. If you like the Drone Radio Show, please consider supporting the podcast with a small donation. The content is always free, but for as little as $1, you can help defray the costs of production. To donate, go to droneradioshow.com/donate. And thanks for listening. Your support means a lot to me, and I hope you'll listen to more episodes of the Drone Radio Show podcast to hear how others are using drones for business, fun, and research. For the Drone Radio Show, I'm Randy Goers.
This has been the Drone Radio Show podcast. More information on today's show can be found on our website at www.droneradioshow.com. If you're using drone technology for business, fun, or research and would like to share your experience on the show, please visit our website and fill out a guest appearance application. And don't forget to follow us on your favorite social media channels.